Well, errors have been made. Uh, Definitely not my finest start ever, but we will get there eventually. And you can see now the screen is just freaking out. What have I done? Oh gosh, what have I done? I've made everything, just everything wrong. Okay, hey, here I am. So here's what's going on, guys. First off, totally lost track of the time. I was playing Among Us, and definitely didn't realize how late it had gotten. Second thing going on here is that I've changed the way I do my streaming stuff. So I used to use OBS in one window, and it would create a virtual camera that I'd pipe into StreamYard. And with one of the recent updates, Streamlabs OBS got a virtual camera. I'm like, oh, good, I can ditch one of the programs I use. And that'd be true if I was using StreamYard to actually pipe this over to YouTube, but I'm not. I'm using my own computer. So I'll get John in here so you guys can hear him. Hey, John, how are you doing? Oh, let me unmute you. Gosh, this is going to be one of those streams. Hey, John, how are you doing?
Too much.
I
Good,
know.
how are you?
I clearly am hanging out with Anti too much. I've just started to mess up all over the place on my streams. So I'm going to have to kind of switch some things around here real quick, but that's okay, guys. John, I am sorry I don't have you in here, but I'll get this fixed. Just hang tight, everyone. What I'm going to do is, there we are, and stop and not visible. Yes, that's what I want. So there, it'll get me over to the side here, and we'll move, shoot, wrong one. We'll move the source over thither. Okay, so we're going to have a small source today, guys. Sorry about that. What is a virtual camera, Thomas is asking. So instead of using my actual camera to pipe everything into Streamlabs, so, instead of using my actual camera as a webcam, what I do is I set up my scene over here in Streamlabs OBS, and I'm pointing at my monitor that has Streamlabs on it, as if that makes a difference. But I use that monitor, or I use Streamlabs to act as if it were webcam. That way I can do all my green screen stuff. I can add things into the scene on the fly, and it just makes for a nice environment for me. Unfortunately, I really didn't think this through for Streamlabs tonight, or StreamYards tonight. I'll work it out before my stream, my next virtual pub stream, which will not be tomorrow night. Although I do promise, around the time virtual pub's going to start, I will don the outfit, and I'll just be wearing that for that segment of the torture stream over at Anti-Trekkers as we go through season 2 of Discovery. But until then, sorry guys, I really should have stopped playing Among Us a long time ago, but I had zero idea how late it had gotten. Until then, that is the link if you want to watch this live with us. I have no problems doing this because it's only going to be active while the stream is on, and you could just as easily go over to peacock.tv, sign up for a free account, and watch it right off their account along with us. This just lets everyone be synced up if you want to do that. Thomas Potts, so you don't need a camera lens? What kind of witchcraft is that? No. I still need a camera lens. It's just I don't need to... I think you know what I mean, Thomas. I think you know what I mean. But with all that said, in just a moment, we will be starting up on cy2.b/r/LifeWithMatthew. And hopefully I have that set up right. Okay, so the other thing going on tonight, guys, is that my wife is off at a Bible study. So I may have to randomly just duck out. In which case, John will continue to say what we're seeing and do witty comments, stuff like that. And I will come back as soon as I have got my kid to go back to sleep, if that happens. So fun times. Thomas is saying, I'm computer illiterate, so I have no idea, but it's not important. Okay, I'll take you at face value there, Thomas. And let me also say hello to everyone who's been hanging out in the chat. Obviously, Thomas Potts has been here saying, Turtistani will give me liberty, Matthew. I have all the liberty I could ever want, Thomas. A sentence that could just as easily be applied to America soon. John DiMarco, as always, greetings. Good to see you. Cinnabon Bunny, how are you doing? I missed your Bonding with the Bunny stream earlier today, but I do have it queued up, so hopefully I can go back and watch that, provided you haven't deleted it by the time I get there. Jeff Franklin, good evening. How are you doing, my friend? I hope you're ready for Season 2 tomorrow. I hear that it is the better of the two seasons, but, I mean, that's not a high bar of achievement right there.
Looks like the difference between two of those jelly beans.
I know. Oh, I'm not looking forward to those. In fact, on that, my hot spices were supposed to get here tonight by 9, and last I checked, they hadn't even shipped yet. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. Okay, Amazon has finally updated saying, oh, by the way, your order is running late. So hopefully they get that to me by noon tomorrow, or else that will be interesting. And you know what? I think I messed up. What I did is I ordered a game, Racco, card game, get your cards in order, numerical order. I ordered that along with the spice, and I bet Racco is what holding everything up. And I think I just heard my wife get home, so great timing, my love. Robert Rose Jr., how are you doing? We are going to be watching episode 8, I believe it is, of season 1, which is called Me Liberte, which is obviously the French version of liberty. And Anti-Trekker, hey, how you doing? My hot sauce did not get in yet. It finally updated saying it's running late. Hopefully it gets here noon by tomorrow. Usually that's how it goes. If I was supposed to get something by 9 of one night and it doesn't get here, usually by noon the next day it does. We'll see. We will see. In fact, honestly, I'm a little tempted. If I go to Amazon right now and I look at my orders, it still says arriving today by 9. I'm curious if this says if I ordered it, would I get it here tomorrow? No, it says it wouldn't get here till Friday if I ordered within the next 2 minutes. I was thinking if I ordered it again, if it guaranteed by tomorrow, but doesn't matter. Tim, Chris, how you doing? Guys, if you scroll up in the chat, you will see I left the link for the watch party. So if y'all guys want to head that way, I will go ahead and get this started. Season 1, Episode 8, Me Liberte. And so we will get that started there, and then we will get some clips going for everyone who doesn't want to do that. Okay, so as usual, we start off the episode underwater with something having happened.
Aquasphere 7. Nobody's answering.
And I really like the way that it seems like in every episode, when something needs to happen, Ford is the one going off and doing it, and the captain stays on the ship. That seems like a much more accurate way that life would actually happen aboard a military sub.
That's another thing they have in common with TNG.
Unlike Kirk, Kirk was just dying to get off the ship and go do fun things. And what's going on is no one's answering, so they decide, well, forget etiquette, just go ahead and open the door and we'll apologize if someone was in the shower. And I have to eat 5 beans plus 5 crickets? I really hope that the hot sauce gets here on time then. It is a military and a scientific crew, and I do like the balancing act that they're doing between these two groups.
They found something, and it's not good.
Yeah, so we hear their comm chatter no one's saying what's going on, just that something is going on and it's not good. Well, thanks for stopping in, Anti-Trucker. I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully with some hot sauce in hand. And we're finding out that the entire Aquasphere team is dead. There were no survivors, and it looks like maybe they did it themselves. Anti-Trucker's going to spend the last night with his wife. That's great. Chief Cook, how are you doing, my friend? It's so good to see you around. I haven't seen you in just a dog's age, man. And yeah, it was a military sub. And in the first episode, after the commander, the captain of the sub, kind of went AWOL, went rogue, wanting to start World War V or whatever they're up to by this time. She was relieved, and they decided that they needed to make it less militaristic and more scientific, kind of a merging of the two. And so Captain Bridger was the one who was decided to be the one to bridge the gap, as it were. Dr. Westphalen, she's asking, or the captain said, what do we know so far? And she said, well, so far we know that there's dead people. Beyond that, I got nothing. And she's saying, but here's the good news. Death can tell you plenty. You just have to know how to listen to it.
Now they put the away team in quarantine so they figure out what's happening, which is a very smart move if you think about it.
It is, and I suspect this is the only time we're really going to see it happen, but it really does make sense for there to be more quarantine of people whenever they come back from one of these missions. Which is something I did enjoy about Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise. Just every time you get back, you have to be in quarantine and decontaminate. Until TNG came along and they came up with the pattern buffers can recognize foreign infections and get rid of it. Except for every time it doesn't.
Okay, Ford is not happy that he's in quarantine.
So the way Ford is acting here, I really thought that this was going to be the Naked Now episode of SeaQuest. That everyone was going to be starting to be affected by whatever's going on. It was going to cause them to behave irrationally and aggressively. Because Ford is kind of acting strange throughout this time. Thomas, I liked the concept of the decontamination chamber. It made for a couple fun episodes, like the one with the Ferengi. I didn't like the way they used it just to show skin in some of the early episodes. So we're finding out that this doctor or this scientist over here, Bridger's asking him like, "Hey, do you agree with Ford? Do you think we should just let you guys go?" And he's saying, "If you had asked me 5 minutes ago, I would have said yes, but now there's something strange that we found."
And they found something when they were out exploring that didn't belong there, and they brought it back.
because Ford's argument was, hey, there's no sense for us to be in here. These guys haven't seen anything except each other for the past 60 days. Which humorously, I have a buddy who was just deployed, which I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say where, so I'm not. But he was just deployed, and they were going to take like 3 or 4 months just to get to the final destination of where they were going, because each country they stopped in, they're going to have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And so they finally worked a deal where from 2 weeks before the trip, they're going to self-isolate on the base, and then it's going to be a private plane for just them, and they're going to be self-isolated all the way through. And so that way, it's going to count as being isolated the whole time.
And they've discovered what looks to be some sort of space capsule.
We find out it's the Liberté space station. And it appears that it was a space station that crashed like a decade ago. And the security chief he's the security chief, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's annoyed because he was at a baseball game and that sub crashing called him away from getting to see how the game ended, and they never even found it in the end.
Now they're going to examine it with their VR probe.
And yes, Chief Cook, SeaQuest is based a lot like TNG. It's definitely one of the reasons I've enjoyed it as much as I have. It has some very strong TNG feels to it. Thomas Potts, do I like seeing Tucker in his undies? Nothing wrong with a little eye candy for the ladies.
Now the probe is opening the hatch into the space station.
Cinnabon, this show has 2 Wesley Crushers, though. That's right, the dolphin, Darwin, and then the young boy whose name was Lewis, as you recall from last week.
And I'll take Darwin over Wesley any day.
Okay, so we're seeing the dead people, and there's like these flashes of light going on, and I thought for sure these flashes of lights were going to be something that affected Bridger and everyone there watching the stream. But it turned out it was just supposed to be like a scary effect.
I know Lucas thinks that whatever confederation that the space station belonged to is hiding something.
And we're finding out that they had claimed to have 4 people on the space station. All 4 of them were pulled safely before the space station crashed. But he's been able to find an autonomous zone, the area of the internet where each rich person puts their dirty secrets. Not exactly the best concept out there, but plot's got to move, I guess.
And Bridger knows somebody who is connected with this space station.
They want to find this guy, but it seems like he just dropped off the face of the earth after the Liberté crashed. And Ford is acting a little more rational as time goes on. So Lucas turns off the comm, but Bridger tells him to turn it back on and get out of here. I mean, Lewis, excuse me, Lewis. And Bridger has kind of a nice moment to reprimand Ford. Ford is acting kind of out of line here, and Bridger reminds him that the game goes on, even if you're not part of the team investigating things. So you need to calm down, and he'll talk to West Valen to see what we can do about quarantine. And Bridger is finding out from West Valen that everything the people on the Alpha Sub 7 or Alpha Sphere 7 died from something that was on the space station, a canister, and now everyone in decontamination has it also. And so he's demanding that West Valen figure out something to save his crew. So West Valen talks about how she's talked to the Surgeon General, the head of Mayo, and then the head urologist somewhere. And so the first two make sense for trying to figure something out, but talking to the head urologist seems like just a weird one to include. Like it was the head urologist at Johns Hopkins, something to sound impressive, but doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, one of the crew in the quarantine is asking to get a message out to his wife.
And so the captain grants him permission to talk to his wife, possibly for the last time. He says, we'll get up to a depth where you can call. Which I guess is a bit of a pragmatic response, but I really expected him to say something like, hey, it's a little too soon to be throwing in the towel at this point. But he does give a nice speech here talking about how everyone here is the best of the class, be it military or scientist. And, you need to have faith in Dr. West Valen. We got the best team possible for attacking this problem. And this scene actually is one of the scenes that made me think that the virus had gone outside contamination. If you look at Dr. West Valen, like she has quite the sweaty look on her face right now. And so I thought that maybe she was starting to get a fever or something this scene. And she was also acting just kind of out of character, it seems like, in this episode. Really, really argumentative back and forth with Bridger. But no, everyone's safe in decontamination, it seems. And so Lewis here is saying that, the people that when he got the information about the scientist guy, they dogged his link, or tagged his link and dogged him all the way back, which was just meaningless not even computer jargon, stuff that was supposed to sound like computer jargon, but it's meaningless. And he's just saying that, hey, when he was getting his information, they got it right back. Jeff Franklin, what do I want on my tombstone if it comes up? I think we'll go with the Han Solo quote. No reward is worth this.
And Bridger's going up to find this scientist who they think knows something about the space station.
And Dr. West Valen wanted to give him a load of questions to ask, and he's like, it's not going to be necessary. Put out the good towels. Hopefully we're going to have a guest coming back. So he's trying to tell her that he's trying to get the doctor to come back to SeaQuest so that she can ask him all the questions she needs to herself. Meanwhile, he pulls Commander Hitchcock aside and tells her, look, Ford's in charge, something that doesn't really make sense for someone in decontamination to be in charge, but Ford's in charge. But if his health deteriorates, then she needs to take over, even if it is going to be a little bit awkward. Jeff, I was supposed to be optimistic and say something like sausage and mushrooms. Sorry, I'm too much of a realist to to make that joke, apparently. And Dr. Westphalen asks Ford to open his hand, and he has a hard time. So she's seeing that there's a loss of motor control. Hey, Joe Biden, how are you doing? He said, the virus on this episode is Trump's fault. FYI, I will remove your wife, Judge Amy Barrett, from the Supreme Court when I'm president this December, number 22. Thanks for stopping by, Uncle Joe. Always nice to have you on the stream.
And doctors trying to encourage Ford to fight this disease and how it's affecting him.
I'm not sure if you noticed in that shot, but like she's really starting to look more and more haggard as the episode goes on. Like in that shot, she had like a lot of clumps of hair kind of wisping out, and I guess the point they're going for is they're trying to show that she's putting a lot of energy into solving this crisis and is having a physical toll on her.
No, another ship has showed up.
So Hitchcock asks Sam Raimi to talk to them and try and figure out what they're here for. And then we get a roll credits moment in French where it turns out that they say, give us the liberté. And that's why the other sub is here.
Meanwhile, Bridger and Crocker are in France looking for their missing scientist.
The car made me laugh. Did you notice that Bridger got out on the left side?
Oh, yeah.
And so the security chief is trying to pick up this French lady, like for the evening, and she slaps him upside the head for trying to ask her to bed, basically. So Bridger comes down and is like, "What's that all about?" And the security chief responds, "Oh, I was just asking for her for directions, but she didn't have any."
Well, at least she may have had one specific direction about where he could go, though.
True. So Hitchcock comes down to ask Ford what they should do about this French sub in the area, but Ford's mind is slipping, and he keeps saying, what does the captain think? And she's like, the captain's not here.
And Ford thinks for a minute and says, blast the other sub out of the water.
So Hitchcock tries to talk him down, and he responds with, well, then just give the sub to them. And tell them that we'll leave the area. And she tries to explain, like, hey, do you remember there could be something on board, like a giant contaminant? So Ford's like, look, Lieutenant Commander, I gave you an order. And she responds calmly, and he thinks about it for a minute. sees that he's now physically damaging himself from his hand clenching too tightly, and then asks again, what does the captain think, having already forgotten that she told him he wasn't there. So she promises that she'll go find out what the captain wants, and Ford heads out. And so Daniel's hot topic is wondering, do we believe in time travel and infinite parallels realities? Nope. No, I only believe in a linear flow of time, and I just believe in the one reality. I think it's a fun sci-fi concept, but in terms of do I think it really exists? Nah. I think it's junk science.
Well, Hitchcock has come back up to the bridge and announced that she's going to have to take command.
Now she's taking command. She wants to get the captain of the Lafayette, which fortunately they speak the universal language of English, so everyone's able to communicate with each other. And she's telling him that they need to stand down and leave, and he's responding with, well, this isn't personal, it's just the Liberté is ours, and we're going to take it. And so she threatens to blast him out of the water, and he responds with, well, I thought the SeaQuest was a peacekeeping vessel, and at the same time he starts to flood his forward torpedo tubes to fight. But she's able to call their bluff, and they close their torpedo tubes and back off.
A wise decision, I think.
I didn't get that the first time. So this guy walks up to the security chief and says, "Pardon," and he responds with, "Sorry, you're gonna have to find someplace else to curl up tonight." And so clearly, the security chief thought that he was coming on to him, and he was turning him down. Like that's his impression of France, that everyone is that open to nightly comforts. And so they kind of force their way inside, and they're saying, that we have questions about the Liberté, and he's saying, well, you got the wrong man. And thankfully, there's a photo of him on the Liberté right on the desk, and so they're like, no, I'm pretty sure we got the right guy. And Bridgers is informing that they found the Liberté, and he doesn't believe them, but he's saying, no, we found it at the bottom of the ocean.
Science just wants nothing to do with it.
Hey, D.D. Myers, how you doing? And Bridgers begs him. He's like, come on, we need your help. People are dying. And the scientist sadly responds with, well, that's what people do. They die. Thomas Potts says very true. The Vulcan Science Directorate does say that time travel is impossible. And yes, Jeff Franklin, well, what does the Vulcan Science Directorate know anyway? So Bridger is asking, what was it like up on the moon? What was it like to be up there and stare at the Earth down here? The scientist responds back with, it's like looking at a magnificent blue marble. And Bridger says, well, blue marble, that's the color of my world. So I'd like to give you a chance to see my world.
Bridger asks him, "Come see my world for yourself."
Jeff is saying alternate realities is certainly a possibility and would explain some issues we have with the standard model and to unify the four fundamental forces. Can we talk to them? Probably not. That's an interesting thing about the four fundamental forces. Gravity may not be a force at all. Gravity may be an observation of other things. It's a really interesting study. Kind of weird, but very interesting nonetheless. So now Bridger is asking the scientists, well, what even happened on the Liberté? What were you trying to hide? And he's kind of fessing up that there may have been some illegal research going on in the station. And Crocker's saying, well, why were you the only one that even made it back? And so we find out that the scientist was the only one in the safe room whenever there was an onboard accident that happened and a virus got out and infected the rest of the people. So Bridger is asking how Ford is doing, and Hitchcock is informing him that Ford's not doing great. But there's another problem, that the French want their ship. Jeff Franklin, that is funny. But to be fair, Einstein was one of the people who talked about how gravity may not be a force at all. And one of the experiments he did to prove it is how if you were to send a beam of light across a space shuttle and cause it to accelerate, there would be a deflection in that beam of light. And he tried to use that to show that gravity wasn't necessarily a force per se. But I'd also point out that if light turns out to be a particle, it could explain why we would see some of that deflection, and gravity could still be a force. Like I said, we get into territories where science becomes almost pseudoscience as opposed to hard science. But it's interesting things to think about. It's interesting fields of study. And here's Lewis sticking his nose where it doesn't belong.
The doctor's sporting a stylish SeaQuest vest.
He is. Unfortunately, what he's not doing is giving them any good information. They're asking, what area of the genome did your study focus on? He's like, sequence 21 or 22? I don't remember. And he's just kind of crumbling under the pressure, and his brain really isn't in the game. And he finally remembers that it was the 21st chromosome, and the sequence was GTAG, I think. And Lewis is telling him that it's no time for guessing games, that this is your fault. Now, get in there and fix it. But he tries to pick up some test tubes and just starts shaking. I can't do it.
And Creed's come in to bring in some stuff to break up their boredom. In full isolation suit.
Which I want to say it's put on improperly. Notice how the hood sits over the shoulders and loose? I would imagine that was supposed to be tucked in and tightly bound so that air couldn't get in. Maybe I'm wrong. I've certainly never done any work in a hazmat suit. Arc flash, yes. Hazmat, no.
Then Ford just tore the suit.
If you notice that whole scene, there's actually a hole in the suit the entire time. It was just they did the ripping noise at that moment. And of course, the morale officer kind of freaks out and he's like, well, I gotta get out of here before something bad happens. And Bridger says, no, something bad has already happened. You're staying in. I hadn't noticed before, but the suit is so tight on him that it's pushing his nose to the side. That must have been pretty uncomfortable to do the shots in it. That's true, Cinnabon. This show had a Neelix before Voyager. Except he was kind of more shady than Neelix. Neelix had a heart of gold. Like he actually tried to make people feel better. Krieg he's just kind of scummy. He has good moments, but he's kind of scummy.
He's got a little bit of cork in him.
And Bradley Briggs is saying that hazmat suits work with positive air pressure to keep outside materials from entering the suit. Tiny holes and such don't matter much. That's good to know. So Bridger goes to confront the scientist and knock the booze away from him. Which that kind of makes me wonder in real life. I wish Darren was around. In real life, can you really have booze on a submarine? Or would the thinning agents of the alcohol cause problems in the event that you had to surface? So Bridger is asking the scientist, what happened to you? What changed you for the man I used to admire? And the scientist reveals that there were actually 2 survivors. And that the records show that he was the only one who left the space station, but there's actually another. His name was Pierre, of course. And that even though he was in the main compartment like everyone else, he was the only one who didn't get sick. And so the scientists here watched him for 2 days as everyone started to deteriorate and then go crazy. And Pierre died not at the hands of the virus, but at the hands of the other crew members, basically.
He begged and begged to be let out. Of course, the doctor didn't let him out.
He says he was too scared to let him come into the safe area. Which, I mean, I'm sorry, but there was an infectious disease inside the compartment. Even if one guy had a natural immunity to it, opening the area would expose the scientist to it and then expose everyone on the rescue ship to the disease. He tries to make it seem like he was just being a coward, but, I mean, in a quarantine situation, that's technically the right call, right?
Sure, pragmatically the right call, but, I think if I was in that situation, I'd probably feel as guilty as he does.
So Wes Balin is realizing that, if Pierre survived, then he must have had some sort of natural immunity. and that if they go over, even though it's been all like a decade, he may still have the antibodies within his bone marrow. Which, if they say so, I mean, I don't know about that. I'd like to hear an actual doctor chime in and be like, "Oh yeah, your bone marrow could totally still have antibodies in it a decade later after you die." I mean, to be fair, he was at the bottom of the ocean. He was probably well preserved. And so the bridge crew starts to hear some ping, ping, pings coming in. And we find out. Oh, go on.
Sorry. I think the North Sea Confederation is sending a plane. They're going to take out the space station to cover the tracks.
We're finding out that once they get a positive lock, they could launch a missile and blow up the Liberte within a couple minutes. And so Captain Bridger says he's going over anyway, but he's going to feel better knowing that Hitchcock is over here keeping the missiles off his back. So the scientists, Bridger, and the security officer are all going over to the Liberte to try and get a sample of the bone marrow. So we find out that they've target locked onto the Liberte and they're just waiting for permission to launch missiles, basically. Bradley, that's an interesting point. The universe we see every time we look up at the sky at night no longer exists. We're looking at light that is sometimes millions and millions of years old. The stars we see could have exploded already. Obviously, I don't ascribe to an older theory, but I also, on a scientific level, I do find the concept of the speed of light an interesting one in that we don't necessarily know what the speed of light is. We know what the speed of light when reflected is. Actually measuring the speed of light, we've never been able to do on a one-way trip. And does reflection cause a delay? We don't know. But it's one of those things I like thinking about. The speed of light could be almost instantaneous, and it could just be that reflection takes a perceivable amount of time. It's also been hard to do any experiments on the speed of light outside of a gravity well, such as our own planet. So we see that they're launching missiles, but the SeaQuest was able to do some countermeasure stuff, and they find Pierre, and the security chief goes in to get the sample he needs.
More missiles incoming.
And so they find the canister, the one that he calls a canister of death, the one that had the virus in it. So they grab it to get it off the sub or off the space station. Jeff is saying, we know the speed of light because we know how long it takes for radio signals from our deep space probes to reach us. Those are not reflected. That assumes that the speed of light is equal to radio waves, and that there isn't a particle aspect to light. It could be that the wave portion of light travels at the same speed as a radio wave, but the particle speed could be different. Light is funny like that.
Now the scientist is saying he's going to stay behind because of the guilt. So Bridger just knocks him out and drags him off.
And so we find out that there's a third missile on the way. And so they're getting ready to intercept it, but it may be too late to do it. And so they're about to fire the torpedoes, but Bridger gets back and he's like, "No, let them. If they want to blow up their own space station, let them. We got the important stuff."
And they took the cancer of death with them.
And apparently they brought it, straight out of decontamination area onto the bridge of the ship. Apparently they decided that the little lunchbox bag they had was sufficient.
There's a futuristic lunch bag there.
Yeah. So Lewis is over on a spectrometer. He's like, "Yeah, we're getting a readout, and it's apparently working." And so she goes over to tell them the good news that once they give them the antidote, they should be able to get out pretty quickly. And Ford says, "I don't know what is worse, dying or being helped by dinks." Bradley Briggs is saying, "If the speed of light is almost unlimited or unlimited, then how does anything slow it down?" And Jeff is saying, "And wouldn't multiple reflections of light slow light more and more if just one reflection would slow it down?" Those are both interesting questions. Like I said, light is a fascinating subject. One might also ask, if you were to have a perfectly reflective sphere and put a candle in the center of it, or just a light source that somehow didn't cause any interference whatsoever, and shoot a beam of light off of one of the reflective surfaces, and that beam of light were to bounce, eventually that entire sphere should be lit up completely and uniformly bright. And yet it doesn't. Regardless of the speed of light is infinite or limited. And just as light has a limited distance in terms of being reflected, it also is going to have a limited in terms of slowdown, it would appear. Like I said, I'm not claiming to know all this. I'm just saying this is an interesting subject, and we see that light operates as both a particle and a wave, and it doesn't always respond the way that we would expect it to respond.
And with that, now we're in our little science lesson at the end of the episode.
And they're talking about how... Yeah, go on.
Sorry. I say, did you notice the writing on the submersible behind him?
The NCC 1701B. Nice. Well, that was a fun episode. It definitely didn't go the direction I thought it was going to go, but it was still a fun one. And it made me wonder if back in the 1993s, if we were starting to deal more with the ethics of biological warfare. I want to say by that point we'd already outlawed its use, but in 1993 I wasn't too old. So I'm not sure.
I don't remember specifically.
Yeah. Me neither. And Jeff is saying radio waves are just light on a different wavelength. It's possible. It's also possible that what we are trying to measure, the fastest way we have of measuring it is electrical based, which is going to travel at the same speed as radio waves. And it could just be that our instruments are limited by our measuring capabilities. Like I said, it's a fascinating subject, and I fully recognize that we work off of a large set of assumptions when it comes to dealing with light, even though we know so very little about it. And there are very easy experiments to do just to show how little we know about it, such as the slat experiment, where when you do one slat, and you do a beam of light, just a proton at a time, you get what you'd expect. There's a wall of light with a single bar, but when you bump it up to 2 or 3, all of a sudden you get multiple slats beyond what you would expect it. And so people try and say, well, this is interference from alternate universes and stuff like that. And that's junk science. I'm sorry. But I do recognize at the same time that we are getting interference patterns that doesn't make sense. And as a result, there's a lot about light that we just don't know. And we're making tremendous assumptions about how it would operate. Tim Chris, what was I wondering about 1993? If that was a time period in which we were looking at biological warfare. Like I was wondering if this episode was done specifically in response to maybe something happening on a global scale. Cinnabon Buddy, 5G will kill us all. And Jeff is saying I'm not quite explaining that right. Fair point. Like I'm doing a quick dumbing down, simplified version of these experiments. John, Project Prometheus will save us. How is LDG, if you're still around, how is Project Prometheus supposed to work if you don't want radio signals inside people's homes? Tim Chris is saying he doesn't recall anything like that, but Desert Storm was going on at the time. That's true. That was the first Desert Storm, or was that the second Desert Storm?
I think it was the first one.
I think it was the first one too. Now Tim is saying first. Oh, Jeff, I wasn't trying to say that it was how much light you sent. I was saying that it was dependent on the number of slats you put up there. That once you put up a certain number of slats, as you send these protons across the room, you would you get one. You put up one slat, you get one black line, exactly like you would expect. The light's being blocked by that single slat. You put up. I want to say once you put up 3 slats, that's when things start to get weird. That instead of there being 3 lines like you would expect, instead all of a sudden you're seeing 5 lines. An interference pattern that really shouldn't exist in the way that the experiment is being controlled. Jeff is saying, no, it doesn't matter on the number of slats. Maybe I've heard the experiment explained wrong. I'll fully admit that it's a possibility, but every time I've heard the experiment explained and seen the experiment performed, it was something about as they put up slats interfering with the travel of the proton across the room, that's when strange things start to occur. Bradley is saying observation of something changes it, and that's really hard to explain. Okay. John, how did you like this week's episode?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites necessarily, but it wasn't too bad.
I liked how there's no Darwin in it. I thought it was a neat look. I thought the characters kind of acted abnormal in this episode. It made sense that Ford was acting strange because that's what the virus did. The longer the virus went on, it seems like the more aggressive people became. Or at least like the more self-harm they inflicted on themselves. But it seemed also like Wes Phelan was acting abnormal. Like she and Bridger had a couple scenes where they're being really catty with each other.
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to chalk that up to her being worried about finding the cure. But yeah, it was a little unusual for her. Something that bothered me a little bit is before Bridger left, he shouldn't have left it to Hitchcock to have to decide whether or not to relieve Ford of duty. He should have just done that before he left.
Yeah, it seemed like they're trying to manufacture some tension there. When I think in reality, it would have just been, hey, For Forts and decamination. Wow. Uh, de I can't say the word now.
Decon- Decontamination.
There we go. Decontamination. You're in charge. Uh, Not only is he in decontamination, he's clearly sick, being infected. So that was weird. I agree. And Jeff is saying if you measure the light before the slats, you get different results than if you measure the lights after the slats. So when and where you measure will change the result, not number of slats. Okay. But again, that's one of the weird things about light. It doesn't behave the way we would expect it to be behaving. And I recognize that is the point of this conversation, that I do see that the ways that we are trying to measure it, it could be that we are limited by our measuring methods. And I recognize also that there could be interference caused by reflection. Now, why wouldn't we see it more than once? I don't know. Maybe that comes back to how we're measuring it at that point. I just recognize that these are things that we should be testing for, but I don't think that we can be testing for it at the same time. I think that I think we are severely limited by our ability to measure things. Jeff Franklin, quantum theory predicts light doing that. I think quantum theory is junk science. I do. I think it's totally junk science. I think it's more pseudoscience than real science.
But quantum explains everything.
I know, right? There were a couple of moments that made me laugh. I mean, just nitpicky things like the car door. I really did enjoy the way the security chief got slapped and then mistook the scientist as as coming on to him instead of just like, I want to get past you. It was kind of weird that Lewis was a doctor all of a sudden at the end of the episode. Like, it made sense for him to be the one hacking into people's networks into their autonomous zone. But at the end, when he was helping Dr. Westphaland, it's like, I guess I could look down a microscope or spectroscope, whatever you're looking down, and I could see stuff there, but I'd have no context for like understanding what I'm seeing.
I think she was just desperate for anybody to help her at that point.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
One thing I did like is that instead of certain other episodes like the one you mentioned, they didn't just let everybody back onto the ship and let the disease spread everywhere. They actually took the step of quarantining them first to see what was going on.
Thomas and Tim. Yes, I know his name is Lucas. I'm just continuing to call him Lewis to poke fun at myself. Bradley's saying is one thing he's always wondered is how do you explain death when nothing in the universe ends? It just changes forms. I guess I'd call death the cessation of biological functions. And Tim, you can disbelieve me. I've been playing a lot of Among Us, so I get I'm being totally sus right now. But if you come back next week, you will find I continue to call him Lewis as long as I can remember to keep the gag going.
That's if he's still around next week.
That's right, assuming I'm still around. Well, since apparently my hot sauce isn't getting here, I think I'll be around and Anti-Trekker will be the one gone. So other than the kind of nitpicky thing of maybe Ford shouldn't have been left in charge, was there anything else in the episode that like really stood out to you in terms of bad or good things?
Nothing that really jumps out at me now. I consider it a fairly middle of the road episode.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. And even their middle of the road episodes, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed watching it again just now on repeat. So it's not like it's a bad episode. Uh, Discovery, it had a lot of just terrible episodes. Um, Jeff Franklin would say that Lower Decks had a lot of terrible episodes. I would say that TNG had a lot of terrible episodes, especially in season one.
Oh boy, yeah.
Uh, I don't know if there's been an episode of SeaQuest so far where I've been like, this is just the worst episode. Like, I'm not sure. Let me take a quick look here. We got, bring this over to the right screen. We've got To Be or Not to Be, the first episode. The Devil's Window, that was the one where Darwin got sick. Treasure the Mind was the telepathy episode. I forget what Games was. That was episode 5.
That's more the biological warfare expert. Escape from prison.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. Treasures of the Tonga Trench. That was the poop episode.
Yes.
That might be my lowest ranking episode. And even that was a funny episode. Don't get me wrong. It just, neither here nor there kind of episode. So even so far, the first 8 episodes here, and then Brothers and Sisters we saw last week. So these first 8 episodes, none of them are ones that I'd be like, I hate this episode. I never watched it again. Like Encounter at Farpoint. I hate Encounter at Farpoint. I could gladly never watch it again. But there hasn't been an episode of SeaQuest so far where I'm like, we're done with it, and I never have to watch again. So that's pretty impressive for a sci-fi series, I feel like. Thomas Potts is asking why I can't say Tim's last name correctly. I am saying Tim's last name correctly. His last name is pronounced Christ. It's just spelled like Christ. He's actually told me in the past that I get his name right. So unless he was fibbing to me that time, I'm one of the few people who actually does get his name right on YouTube. Tim saying I should have told him sooner. He would have bought and sent me a bottle of that Ground Zero. And that's right, no relation. Well, it wasn't until basically around 7 when I saw that my order still wasn't shipped on Amazon. That's when I started to get the sinking feeling that something had gone wrong. So clearly, Anti-Trucker got like the last bottle, it seems like. Let's see if there's been any update. See, and Moonjumper Reviews, who cares what I think, is saying the one episode that I remember as cringeworthy was the Neptune or Poseidon episode. The god firing... spoilers! Spoilers! La 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 la.
And no spoilers for Matthew.
And yeah, it's just saying, so far it's still saying that my order is delayed and not yet shipped. We'll email you as soon as this order ships. You won't be charged until then. We're sorry for the inconvenience. I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to do if this doesn't show up, guys, in terms of hot and spicy things. Which will be a shame because I'm all geared up to do this hot and spicy stuff. Down here, I've got my tortilla chips, and I even got the ones that are bowls. So I can make sure that I get the drops in the middle of it and not miss a single thing. Nothing sliding off of my chip. And then I actually bought off Facebook, so used, a mini fridge that is dinged and scratched up, so it's dirt cheap, but it'll hold lots of frozen things to help me out. And then I got a brand new bottle of antacid. So I was all geared up to be doing the spicy stuff, and I'm kind of annoyed that it's not shipping yet. Yeah, I know AT said earlier in the chat that I'll have to eat 5 beans and 5 crickets. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. I'm not sure if I would have enough jelly beans to get to the stream if that was it. And Bradley Briggs is saying, everyone says my last name wrong, but my family says it the American way and not the German way. You'd have to tell me phonetically or spell it phonetically how it's supposed to be pronounced, because Briggs is the only way I can guess on how it would be spelled. I'm actually extremely annoyed that the hot sauce didn't get in today. Like, the spicy stuff was the number one thing I was looking forward to. Oh, Tim says he has a store with a bunch of those little nitros. I wanted to send 40 to Anti-Trekker. I need to watch Voyages to the Bottom of the Sea. It's a clear influence on Spielberg and SeaQuest. Now, is that like a documentary, or was that a or is that just like a TV series?
Yeah, that was a TV show.
Just a TV show? Okay. Bradley is saying my last name in German. My last name is German, where it descends from is said way differently. Okay. Ha! The first I typed in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea TV show, and the first one that comes up is season 3, episode 11, The Haunted Submarine. Somewhat appropriate. And Thomas, you may enjoy this. I tried to play some more of that Phasmophobia game, and I went back to the training house trying to figure out what on earth I'm doing wrong and how I can play the game right. And I totally got attacked by the ghosts. Freaked me the heck out. Now, apparently in training you don't die, but it way freaked me out. Gave me a heart attack. And someone was saying they smell a rat for me not being able to get this on time. Hold on. I will prove to you if I can. Let's see, how can I share? Okay, I'm just going to do a screen grab here, guys, because I don't want y'all to be looking at all my information. Like so, and like such. And I was going to share it on StreamYard, but I'm not doing StreamYard because, like a dink, I set this up wrong. So instead, we'll have to do a display capture. Not that one. That one. Okay, there you go. See, I just grabbed this in Paint. You can see the two things I ordered there, my Racco game and the Hot Spices game. Oh, Jeff was saying I smell a rat. Well, it's fair, and you. I just want you guys to know that I am, in fact, being honest about this. That I was honestly trying to get it. Okay, with that, guys, I think I do need to go ahead and wrap this stream up. John, thank you so much for joining me tonight on another fun episode of SeaQuest.
As always, it's a pleasure.
Jeff, I know I believe that you were joking. I showed my address on screen. Okay, well, I'll have to edit this in just a second so I don't do that part. So you guys won't hear my usual lovely outro if you're watching this later, nor will you see this. Or actually, I can just blur it. I can blur it in post. And y'all can see this later. Yes, Jeff, I realize that in hindsight. I'll just blur it after this and trust you guys to play nice until like the hour from now when I can actually process the video and blur it. But thank you everyone for letting me know. I didn't think that one through in time. But with that, I am going to wrap it up, and then I am going to give her that address. And thank you all for joining me. And I will see you, and John and I will see you next week for the next episode.
Good night.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please share it, and As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that bell icon to be kept up to date with all the new videos that I release on this channel. And as always, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.